Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity, your recovery focused podcast with your host, Keegan. Today, we're talking to someone who was called a monster and a mistake, but he transmuted that energy into becoming one of the biggest advocates for people who are different, quote unquote. Thomas Wilson found a sanctuary where insults couldn't reach inside the world of stories. Today, he isn't just reading stories, he's rewriting the narrative for the neurodiverse community in Manchester and beyond. An acclaimed advocate, writer, and sensory friendly event specialist, Thomas is proving that our differences aren't defects. In fact, they are our greatest strengths, and he's here to give us how his D&D campaigns do just that and more. So, Thomas, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing very well. Thank you.
Of course. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. At the time of this recording, we have this big winter storm hit the US, and a lot of people that normally don't get ice and snow are getting it. So, a lot of people are freaking out at the moment. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like being called a monster and a mistake from those that shouldn't be calling you that is really the worst thing ever, right? And I mean, that causes such a deep trauma that it's some people never find their way out. So, what was your story like?
Yeah, so especially I'll back up and give a little context on that story. So I
Okay.
grew up on the East Coast.
Hmm.
And as I did, I started off like so many of us with mental health needs and neurodiversity do. We were told we were brilliant, we were so talented in the school system.
Yeah.
Even outside of that, I was told at a very young age I was going to become this immensely successful person. And then when I had a very significant loss in my life at a very young age, by like the time I was 8,
Mm.
that's when my mental health and my neurodiversity started kicking in. And
Mm.
that radically changed people's perception of me. I went from that prodigy to someone who was called exactly that, a monster. I was told before I was in middle school I was going to end up in jail.
Ugh.
And I'm not here to say that I made it easy on anyone. I was definitely a rough case. I
Hmm.
definitely had a lot of struggles. And I mean, to this day, I think when I look back on what I do now and the mindsets around care for people like me, they're radically different. And so I definitely grew up in that 90s era, which if you know the 90s, it was a weird time for empathy and mental
Hmm.
health care. I'm not here to say it was any better in like the 80s and the 70s, but it was definitely a very weird time. Like I know a lot of what people saw in the media was that if you were in therapy, you there was something deeply wrong with you.
Hmm.
And so I grew up, one, not seeing a lot of great representation about myself, but also continually being labeled and acknowledged as something less than.
Mm.
And that was my experience in the school system and in programs for much of my life because I wasn't really being taught how to communicate. I wasn't getting the support I was supposed to get from people who were meant to support me.
Hmm.
And that creates, like you said, a very deep trauma and a very significant kind of self hatred. And
Yeah.
to this day, when I look back and I reflect on my life, it wasn't really until I was in high school
Hmm.
I got into a program that really worked well for me. Um, that started to change. I had teachers who were shifting the narrative from you're you're just expressing yourself. Shifting that from you're a monster to you're expressing yourself. You're going
Mm.
through a very difficult experience. And that was the
Uh-huh.
first time in a very long time that people would talk to me like that. After that, I graduated from high school, something many of my teachers in elementary told me I wouldn't.
Oh.
um, I also went on to work as a reading tutor with people who were struggling to catch up in their grade when it came to reading, which is one of my favorite jobs I've ever had because I got to see kids who
Yeah.
hated reading at the start of the program
Uh-huh.
jump out of their seats and be excited and be like, I get to go read, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
Not long after that, I ended up in healthcare where I served as a mentor and an advocate for a really long time. But
Mhm.
I always put this caveat in here because, as great as this story sounds, I always tell people that when you have a mental health diagnosis or neurodiversity, or really any other trauma or lived experience, every single day has to be a dedication to live your best life.
Ooh.
If you don't put in that effort, you don't try to work hard, care for yourself, care for what you've created, all of these things,
Mhm.
it can fall apart very quickly. And so in 2021, I had a hard reset and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life.
Okay.
And I remember when I was on a couch, just distraught emotionally, mentally, and I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to pursue that's going to get me out of this? And I remembered my dream of being a storyteller and all of these, like being a storyteller, chasing that dream, chasing that creativity. And I said, I'm going to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
And so I opened my business 2 weeks later, literally right before the end of the year.
Huh.
And in 2022, I was fully operational. And
Nice.
after that, it's been this beautiful ride. It's been hard. It's been challenging. I've been
Mhm.
highlighted internationally. I've worked with a ton of different organizations. I've helped to define how D&D or Dungeons and Dragons can
Mhm.
support people. And it's been a really challenging but really beautiful way to see how what I wanted as a kid, the empathy I craved, the passion I craved, the informed care that I craved can be utilized even to this day
Mhm.
and help people better chase the future they want. And at this point, it's been a constant accumulation, I think, of like some good karma. Some of the things that I went through helped to develop that
Uh-huh.
and help me to better understand the world. And in all of my work every day, it is this beautiful progression from those memories that are deeply painful to establishing futures people want by helping them hear their voice,
Yeah.
acknowledge their worth, and be creative in a really
Mm.
complex but beautiful way.
Oh, man. That is an awesome and beautiful story, Thomas. So thank you for sharing with us because, I mean, going through that kind of stuff, at first, it seems almost impossible to talk about, right? You can't
Mhm.
express yourself because expressing yourself got you kind of in trouble in the first place. So, what would be the
Mhm.
point of doing it if it just kept doing that again? And it sounds like the teachers in your high school were really that pivot point for you and really just showed you what it was. And it sounds like they became the role models that you eventually became yourself, right?
I like to believe so. Yeah, I those high school teachers, and I've been blessed to have several people who have also stepped up in my life recently and in the past. And
Mhm.
I mean, the thing I remember about that school and that program was they worked really hard to establish an identity outside of each student's mental health struggles.
Huh.
And that was, I mean, traditionally something that means a great deal to me. I also
Mhm.
remember my algebra teacher regularly gave up his lunches to
Huh.
help me graduate high school because he knew I wanted to do better and I wanted to study and I wanted to do these things.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, we're going to help you, we're going to make sure you succeed. And those kind of people, the people who sacrifice for themselves within reason, right? We have to
Mhm.
be able
Mhm.
to um, honor our own experiences and honor our boundaries. But he really fought for me, and as that program worked, there were more and more people who really stepped up. In fact, the high school principal, who is unfortunately no longer with us,
Mm.
in my opinion, is one of the greatest advocates I've ever known because he fought every day for every student who went through that program.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, before he passed away, not long before he passed away, he was able to advocate for an entirely new school to be built
Wow.
for the people in that program
Mhm.
because the old building was like falling apart.
Ew.
And to this day, when I think of a great advocate, I think of that principal because he gave all of himself, but he also would not give in to the stereotypes and the ableism that so
Mhm.
many of us experience.
Ooh, yeah. That principle sounds like a rock among rocks, you know? And to be such an advocate and leave such a lasting impact really speaks volumes about what he did because you're just one story in a sea of stories, right? So
Hmm.
it's really cool that you had this kind of example and had these really influential people in your life because now you get to sit here and do the same for everyone else. And you add your own flavor to it. You add your own twist. And Dungeons and Dragons is one of those things that went with the satanic panic back in the day. And if you even thought about playing it, it was just like, oh no, yeah. And so it's really cool that you're utilizing that. So why don't you tell us how storytelling really just makes life life? Because without it, I don't think we got much.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always highlight that I think storytelling is the great um, it is the great art form in humanity. It connects to every part of our lives. It connects to absolutely everything that our world views valuable. I mean, it's part of painting, it's part of television, movies, it's part of how we check in with people. It's something that connects every human being in one way or another. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people forget that. We forget how powerful storytelling really is.
Mhm.
And I think especially when you put it in a lens of trying to help people through it, the
Mm.
main focus that comes through is that storytelling is communication. It is helping people identify their needs, it's helping people identify how they communicate. And I actually saw a really great post on social media today, which someone had, it was part of an autism support group, and somebody
Mhm.
said, um, accepting your autistic youth is not trying to change them, it's
Hmm.
helping them become their best selves in the world, and and
Ah.
it's also helping them succeed. And I think that was, it was such a beautiful and simply said thing, and it works for everybody, right? We don't have to have
Mhm.
autism or mental health needs or any other lived experience for that to be the case, because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, establishing a means through storytelling to help people share who they are, what they need, and what they'll need in the future is a solid pathway to success.
Mm.
And all of that being said, for those of us wondering how we do that, it often starts with questions and allowing people to ask questions. I like, my big frustration in this world is how much we tell people to not ask questions, because
Mm.
asking question fuels creativity, it fuels
Mhm.
curiosity, it fuels knowledge. And
Mhm.
it becomes very apparent when people tell people not to ask questions that you're basically telling them not to thrive in life, not to succeed, and not to continue their education.
Yeah.
um, and I think all of these things play into storytelling, but at the same time, they play into humanity. They play into
Mhm.
that. And with Dungeons and Dragons, it's a beautiful game that teaches us to think creatively, to plan out ideas, to,
Mhm.
yes, roll dice and be silly and wacky for a little while, but it also creates a safety net for
Mhm.
people to make decisions and to learn and to grow and build friendships. Like, I know
Mhm.
I have groups that have been going on for years now.
Uh-huh.
And the thing that maintains that is that people are having fun, they're expressing themselves, they have lasting friendships with people they may never have met. And it
Mhm.
also, when it's done empathetically, it establishes a space where safety is key.
Mm.
And yes, there might be imaginary dangers, but there's always a method to overcome those dangers.
Mm. Okay. I love that because my next question was going to be talking about you'd mentioned ableism before, right? And it's kind of one of those
Mhm.
things that ableism it sits there and tells you you can't because or something along those lines. And D&D sounds like it'd be the perfect ground to sit there and abolish that kind of stuff. Would you agree? Is that kind of how you use those D&D campaigns?
Oh, definitely. I think it's crucial when constructing a space for anybody for there to be an understanding of safety. And I think like so many societies are inherently ableist. And I don't think it's really people realizing that they're being ableist. I think
Mm,
ableism is something that can be incredibly sneaky
okay.
and incredible, like it's so built into so many societies that I think a lot of people who don't want to be ableist
Mhm.
actually end up being ableist. When we look at like
Huh.
the history of the United States and most
Oof.
countries, it's very much built against people with lived experience with like neurodiversity, mental health,
Mhm.
physical, I don't want to say abnormalities because that's not the right word. Physical disabilities. It's
Mhm.
it's so built around, so much of our society is like fundamentally built around that.
Yeah.
And I think when you create a space that is truly safe and is
Mhm.
truly sensory friendly and is truly compassionate, there is much more conversation around, okay, if you want to try this wacky thing, try this wacky thing. If you want to be a character that doesn't spend much of their life being like, not in a wheelchair, or which
Mhm.
I actually think one of my favorite things to have conversations with people about are like things I don't know about. And
Mm.
so there have definitely been times people have shown up and they're in a wheelchair, and I love to be able to build in the power of that wheelchair. I actually saw
Huh.
somebody who turned their wheelchair in D&D into like a multi-level tank that had multiple missiles and um, could traverse water. It was like the 007 vehicle of wheelchairs, and I absolutely loved it. I also talked to somebody who was vision impaired
Uh-huh.
and they had a hard time seeing, and we had a conversation about creating echolocation so that
Ooh.
they could use echolocation so that they could see in different ways, and they basically became Daredevil, and it was awesome. And part of that is stepping back to acknowledge our bias
Uh-huh.
and acknowledge our weaknesses and see from another person's perspective.
Mm.
And I love these conversations because I get to highlight the fact that even though we have one situation that people think holds us back, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it has to at all times. And creativity is really the mechanism to bridge those gaps.
Yeah, creativity is a fuel for life, I think, because if we think about it, evolution had to get pretty creative with a lot of the stuff it did. And we can't sit there and tell life, hey, don't go evolving that way.
Mhm.
That's wrong. You can't do that. That's weird. And so, one of the things that you did say, though, does kind of make me curious. Like, if we're trying to not be ableists and whatnot, and you say that it's sneaky, how's one of the things that can someone do while trying to be good and they accidentally say the wrong thing or something? Because I myself don't want to be that way. And the more aware that I am of that, the better off I can help everyone else, you know? So it's kind of like, how do we make sure we don't accidentally step on someone's toes, per se?
So I think it's important to note that no matter how well meaning we are, no matter how much we care about people, we
Mm
are going to step on someone's toes inevitably. It's gonna happen.
hmm. Mm hmm.
We're all gonna, like earlier in this conversation, the first thought that came to my head was abnormality. And I
Mm.
know that's not the right word. That's not a term people should use for those of us who have a physical disability or physical diagnosis or lived experience with diagnoses
Mhm.
in that vein. And like you can even hear me say it. I changed my phrasing 3 times.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about communication is it's constantly adapting, and there's
Mm,
always going to be one person who prefers something versus something else. Like, it took me a while to accept that the autism community prefers to be called autistic. Like,
mm,
when we say I'm autistic,
mhm,
or and there are people who prefer to say I live with autism.
mhm,
And there's all this different ways to claim things. So eventually you're gonna step on someone's toes or you're gonna make a mistake.
mm,
And I think it's also important to acknowledge, and someone I listened to, and this woman had, in my opinion, the best opinion on bias I've ever heard, which she said, we are all biased. We all have inherent bias. We're taught
mhm,
to be biased.
yep,
We're raised to be biased. But just because we're biased doesn't mean we have to give in to our biases. It doesn't
mm,
mean we have to be cruel or mean or angry. And we
mhm,
can view bias as areas to grow. And I think that was such a beautiful way to look at it. And so, incorporating these things, we're going to step on toes. We're going to be biased. I
mhm.
think the biggest way when we step on toes, when it does happens, is to be genuinely accountable.
Ah,
See that
okay.
as a moment to change and to adapt and to grow. And then the other thing that we can do to also help prevent those moments is, instead of generalizing people or automatically assuming
Mhm,
that someone's either going to be okay or upset with something, have conversations with them. Like,
mm,
have meaningful and lasting conversations. And one of the best things that I find people do, and I try to apply this, is I ask people if well, first of all, I ask them if they're okay to have conversations about these things.
mhm,
Second, I ask them how they identify. And
mhm,
then third, I ask them what they need. Um, and those three things are really powerful because they give autonomy, they give agency, and they give the person the opportunity to choose their pathway. And then the
mm,
last thing with the accountability in those is understanding you may want to help someone, but your good intentions are not always needed or are not going to be wanted.
mhm,
And so being able to step back and allowing people to make choices, even if you haven't stepped on their toes already, is key, because we become ableist when we assume someone needs our help. We
mm,
become ableist when we allow our biases to fuel our opinions of a person. And we also become ableist when we force what we want on someone,
mm,
especially if we don't know that person, or
mhm.
we just assume that when they're expressing themselves, we need to fix their situation for them.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, I love everything you just said because I do agree. We are all biased in some way, shape, and form. And as much as we want to be unbiased, that's a bias in itself. You know, it's kind of paradoxical.
Mhm.
You can't really get away from it. And kind of like what you were saying, those good intentions can really come and bite you in the butt. And I've had that happen plenty of times. You know, it's like I'm just trying to help, but I had spoken with Ken Kunkin, who's an awesome guy. He's quadriplegic and stuff from a football accident, and he's sitting there telling the same kind of thing that you were. Just sometimes he just doesn't really need the help or want it necessarily, but he's also not going to turn it away if he really needs it because there are some things he definitely can't do. But I think it's beautiful that you're sitting there and you're creating these conversations that give these people the ability to have that autonomy, the agency, and the opportunity to write their own story because whenever you think about it day to day, it's a blank canvas. It's its own little book. It's a chapter, if you will. And some people want to write the chapters for us. And I don't know about you, but that pisses me off to a great extent whenever someone tries to write my story for me. And it's like, that is not where I'm trying to go. Like, that's not who I am. Please just, that's what I really wanted was to express myself, to be able to be heard and understood. But whenever you feel unsafe in being able to even do that, it makes it really difficult. So, whenever you were growing up and you were overcoming all of this, what was one of the other things that you caught yourself maybe doing that you've had to course correct yourself on for the sake of your journey?
I mean, the big thing for me, it took me a long time to understand myself, and I think the biggest thing for me was learning to accept myself and actually like myself.
Mm.
Like so many people, when you go through trauma, you develop, like I develop. I'm not gonna speak for anyone else here. I'm gonna go back to me. Um, I developed an intense self-hatred of myself to a
Same.
degree where I mean, it was unhealthy. I caused a lot of harm to myself, and I also, on the other side of it, I caused a lot of harm to people, people I
Yeah.
loved. I said things I shouldn't have. I made decisions that I'm very lucky that I made it out of safely,
Mhm.
and that had to change. Like, to get where I am now, I couldn't carry that self-hatred, but I think,
Mhm.
and this isn't something people talk about all the time when we talk about self-hatred, but I also developed a real selfishness in my
Mm.
self-hatred.
Ooh.
Um, I often, like, I know, like, the golden rule is treat yourself the way you want to be treated,
Mm.
but at the same time, my mentality was I hate myself. So if I
Mhm.
treat people this way, then I'm just treating others the way I want to be treated. And that's a
Mm.
really dangerous mindset to have when you're at a low.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous mindset to have anytime. But I think,
Mhm.
like, looking back at my life, I did make selfish choices. And I had to, for the sake of myself and for the communities I built and the people I love, I had to also challenge my internal depressive selfishness. And if I
Mm.
didn't change that, and if I didn't make mature, capable, confident decisions and better understand them, um, I would not have been able to get to where I am in life. And I would not be the healthier, loving person than I am. And I'd love to say, oh, every day is so much easier and I don't fall back on bad decisions from time to time. And I'd love to say, like, it's very different to represent yourself on a podcast within an hour timeline and
Uh-huh.
make wise words sound good and you know, always, like, I'm not to say, like, I don't always make rational decisions. I don't always treat people the way that I should all the time.
Mhm.
But every day, going back to that, changing my mindset, but also making those living my best life decisions,
Mhm.
I to this day, I still force myself to remember, if I make this choice, is it gonna impact the people I love? And then I try to follow that up with, will it impact the people who now rely on me and see me as someone who can help them build their best life?
Mhm.
Because when you get to a certain level in a career, especially in a career like mine, decisions don't just impact me anymore.
Mhm.
They impact the people who I see on a regular basis, who I mentor, who I run games for.
Mhm.
Because without these wise choices, these healthy choices, there are going to be a lot of people who lose out on something that is empowering them and
Mm.
helping them to have a safe and secure community.
Yeah. Oh, man, first, I just gotta say, I'm so glad that you were able to get out of that self-hatred and everything like that, and I'm right there with you. Like, I'm just now starting to get to know and understand myself and love that aspect of me and everything, the part that was shoved in the bottle and tossed away like it was something that was v toxic and vile, and that's not the case,
Mhm.
but kinda like what you were saying, I have to still have that accountability. I have to have that reflection on what I did and how it affects others. But it also does kind of bring up that weird paradox because we have to be kind of selfish in getting ourselves better so we can help other people, right? But it's a weird
Mhm.
tightrope to walk. And I think that you're doing an amazing job at it as well because it sounds like you've really pondered a whole lot of this stuff. You've experienced it and you're just helping other people find that safe space, find that ability to advocate for themselves, even. And that is a hell of a thing to do whenever everyone's just telling you the exact opposite sometimes. And the world is changing, but at the same time, it's weird because there's a lot of pushback on this kind of thing. Like, why is woke something that's bad? or whatever. And I'll never understand it because to me, it's just people trying to be humans, trying to be themselves. And it's trying to shame people
Mhm.
into that box that makes them comfortable because it is easier for them to understand because they don't have to think about it, maybe. They don't have to live it. And maybe they're even ashamed that they don't get to express themselves the way that other people are. I don't know. And
Mhm.
it sounds like really one of the things I do have to ask though is with that self-hatred and everything, uh, I imagine that there were some self-destructive cycles in there, you know. And for myself, I found myself in the bottom of a bottle for 10 years and some other things, and it just was not good for me and those, especially those around me.
Mhm.
But thankfully, I was able to get out after a long time. So, did you have something similar to that? Because sometimes traumas lead into addictions or are the seed of addictions for some people, you know?
So I will be honest, I don't think I had a formal addiction. I think
Yeah.
what my thing was though was my love affair with anger for a long time.
Ooh, okay.
Um I I had to learn a really hard lesson in my life, and
Mhm,
that is anger is not an empowering emotion. It's not a healthy thing. I know a
mhm,
lot of people, even advocates, who are like, "We got to be angry in the right way," or especially growing up with some of the influences I had in the church, there was a lot of talk about righteous anger.
mhm,
Um, and one, I think that there's a lot of power in kind advocacy versus angry advocacy.
mhm.
Also, I have never in my life met a human being who is good at being angry, especially righteously angry. And um, the reason I say that is because anger is a very, like, I think a lot of people confuse anger with purpose.
Mm,
And anger, if anger is your purpose, especially with everything I've had to feel, it's really a false purpose. It's
mm,
something that lies to us.
mhm,
But something I had to learn was that anger, like anger in general, it gives us temporary power, but it almost always creates some kind of mess or pitfall that we fall
mhm.
back into later.
Yeah.
We have to like apologize to people. We have to better understand our actions and all of these things. And my philosophy, especially as someone who has a diagnosis that makes anger very easily,
Mhm,
is we have to better understand the anger, but we have to take those motivations. We have to take that, like that toxicity that is so common,
mhm,
um, and kind of mold it into something productive. And I find very rarely does anger create that productivity. Like we
mhm,
might be frustrated by the systems in the world. We might be frustrated by everything that's going on nowadays,
mhm,
but anger is not the tool that helps heal those situations.
mm,
Anger is the thing that fuels those situations. And so when we talk about like taking that and molding it, I find compassion is the thing that changes things. I find
mhm,
patience is the thing that changes things. I find effort and dedication and love for what you do is the thing that changes things for the better. And
mhm.
I know the main reason I say this is it's so easy to be angry. It's
Yeah.
so easy to lie about to ourselves and to blame everybody else and
Mhm.
to rest in that feeling that we're not the ones causing the problem, or
Yeah.
other people are saying the hurtful thing and I should believe that because that's just them being mean.
Mhm,
And I think a lot of us don't realize how much anger is just it's a lie. It's a just like just like the idea that we're always going to be happy if we get to a certain degree of success,
Yeah.
or if I find the right person in my life, I'm always going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of institutions and a lot of organizations that
Mhm,
to associate anger in the same mentality as the lie that happiness is always going to exist if we just
mhm.
have enough of something.
Mm. Okay. Oof, thank you for highlighting that because anger is definitely one of those things that I myself also struggled with. And I haven't heard anyone ever put anger in the term of equaling purpose, but to me, as you were talking, I was kind of hearing myself going like, well, what the hell is anger in my viewpoint then, right? Because I've also been subjugated to that righteous anger. Like you have to be angry at the right thing to get changes done. If you're not angry, then it means you don't have that drive, you don't have that fuel or whatever. And it's kind of like, well, I think anger would probably be something that's more like a really, really, really hot passion for something. You know, you're
Mhm.
going to suffer for it, but that's the thing is that anger is definitely a fire, and fire is used to destroy things and or transmute things. But most of the time, it just goes to ash, and we can't really do a whole lot of those things. So anger would definitely be something like that hot knife that's sitting there and cutting the string to whatever it is that is you're trying to maybe even fix. And it does really kind of highlight that we have to do things different if we want things to be different. And whenever
Mhm.
we're growing up and we're being told this, you can't do this, you can't do that, your creativity is getting stifled. Of course, that anger is going to build up because you are not being heard, you're not being understood. And so, yeah, you have to have something different come along to show you a different way. And if you don't know, you don't know these kind of things. And uh one of the rules that I've come across, it's the silver rule, and I feel like I like this one a little bit better than the golden rule because it's don't golden rule is don't do unto others what you wouldn't do to yourself, right? No, treat others how you want to be treated. The silver rule is don't do unto others what you wouldn't do to yourself. And so they almost sound the same, but it's also
Mhm.
not quite. And I mean, anger is whenever you're subjugated to it, especially at a young age too, it's like, I don't wanna do that, but at the same time, I don't know how to get myself out and express myself. So, you're creating these safe spaces for people to be able to express themselves, to kind of have that environment that you didn't even have growing up entirely, right? And,
Oh
on
yeah.
oh, sorry.
I Oh no, please, please.
Uh, I didn't realize we had a bunch of lag at the moment. So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, no, it's I grew up in spaces that had well, they were supposed to be safe. They were supposed to be secure. And,
Mhm.
it's always hard. Um it's always hard um to be in a space where you're supposed to be safe, but you don't feel that way. And I
Yeah.
think that's not always the fault of the organization so much as the complication of trying to execute that.
Yeah.
But I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where, like you were saying earlier, we're going to step on people's toes. We're not going to do everything just
Mhm.
right. We are human, and again, like some organizations start off with the best of intention, and there is that saying that all roads to hell are paved with good intention or something like that. And I mean, that's
Mhm.
kind of true. It can be started off for the best of reasons, and just somewhere along the way, someone perverted it and just made it not what it really is supposed to be because interpretation is part of storytelling, unfortunately, because the audience can take the same story and have a different meaning attributed to it, right? Like in in high school, whenever you're sitting there doing English essays and they're like, well, what did the author mean by this? The sky is blue. And the author is like, the sky was blue in that scene. That's it. And everyone's like, oh, it's because depression. It was because of his third, this, that. And it's like, no, sometimes words are just that. They are what they are meant to be. And I guess we have to let our creativity maybe not run our lives, but at the same time, uh, it's because we have to have that communication, right? We have to have that story between two people. We have to have that dialogue. And if we don't have that, that's kind of where I think bridges get burnt. I think people's toes get stepped on and never want to go near that bridge again because it's full of trolls. And I think that it's something that we can just do a whole lot better with ourselves in that form of anger because I was so angry with myself that I couldn't not be angry at anything else. You know, it kind of like you were saying,
Mhm.
if it's bad here, it's not my fault. And there are some things that are objectively not my fault, but at the same time, there's things that I can still do within my own realm that do affect something to that regard for someone else. And it is my responsibility to watch what I say and do. So, whenever you were dealing with your kind of stuff and these organizations and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, I imagine that was a sense of betrayal that you kind of had, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, um it's definitely a sense of betrayal. It's also, I think, something that really compounds the mentality of um I'm less than, especially when you
Mm,
get rejected to work with something that supposedly works with people all across the country or the world or something, and to be told, oh, you're not a good fit,
mm,
or or we don't have the right people for you.
mm,
um I think that's something that's really hard to fully appreciate.
yeah,
And I'm not here to say that, like, every organization should accept every person,
yeah,
especially if you don't have the resources. That's a hard lesson I've had to learn. Like, there are certain cases where you are not the right person or you are not the right organization.
mm,
And especially having that, like, 360 moment of, oh, well, I now understand why I may have heard this, or I also now understand how hard it is for an organization to say that.
mhm,
Um, and so that's a very interesting light in and of itself. But I have the luxury of having that insight, of understanding how
mhm,
hard that is now. At the same time, I still very much believe that anyone can succeed if they are given the right system in order to succeed in. And
mhm,
I also strongly believe that we as providers, we as organizations, we as event specialists, whatever we do, even game masters, it's our job to help those people succeed. It's our job to help that happen.
mhm,
But we also have to inherently draw boundaries and
mm,
make sure that when drawing those boundaries, we're making the right choices for everybody. And I
mhm,
think that really comes down to the people running the event, the people making the decisions, the people interacting with people on a daily basis.
mhm,
And I say that as someone who could have easily given up on a lot of people, and
mhm,
someone who could have shuffled people off to another program or other things. And I have worked hard and worked past that frustration,
mm,
um, because that protection can also become dismissal very quickly. And
mm.
carrying ourselves the right perspective prevents that from happening.
Oof. Okay. I really love how you just brought in the whole you're understanding where some of these organizations had to say no or do what they did because that's maybe not what they're equipped to do. And I mean, as much as
Mhm.
I know one of my trauma responses is being Mr. Fixer, going fixing everyone's problems as best as I can, I know that I am definitely not the kind of guy that is suited to put out a house fire or something like that, you know? It's like, we'll call
Mhm.
911, get the firefighters, the guys that actually are trained to do this, to do that kind of thing. And the best that I could do is to be there for the family and just be like, provide emotional support. And that can be frustrating in its own right whenever you want to help
Mhm.
someone and you can see the need that's there, but you can't really do it yourself. And I think that that's great because at the same time, it really does give you that superpower of your creativity coming to shine because there's still something that you can do, but you just have to change the angle of attack, right?
Yeah, there's and I think that's such an important thing to highlight. Oh,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
okay. I think that's such an important thing to highlight because people who genuinely care, um, like you said, like people who genuinely care, who want to do the work, um, it we are often fixers to a degree. We can also be a variety of different roles. I often don't describe myself as a fixer, partly because I know so many fixers.
Uh-huh.
And it can be a real challenge for a lot of people to have like fixers who show up and be like, okay, this is the thing that you said that you were upset about. Here's 5 pathways to make that happen.
Uh-huh.
And like for people, it's often like, no, I need someone to listen. I need someone to understand. I'm not like, as we said a couple times, I'm not asking you to do that. And I mean, no disrespect for fixers. Like
Yeah.
fixers serve a very important role. I myself, I like to describe myself as a helper. I'm
Mm.
someone who, I'll ask people what they need. I'll step back if they need me to.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of us who enter in this field, we are fixers also to an extreme. We don't want people to struggle. We don't want people to hurt. We want to help everybody. But one
Mhm.
of the dangers of that mindset is we can often become the therapy friend, or um we can get burnt out really easy because we have to watch what is honestly, even in Dungeons and Dragons, I've had this situation play out where um people, they ask so much that we burn ourselves out. And I think that's
Mm.
why boundaries are so important. Boundaries need to be drawn, and I think the hardest lesson that I've had to learn um is it's okay to say no. It's
Yeah.
okay to be that person who's like, okay, well, this isn't going to work out, or this is, or like, if there's, because this will also inevitably happen when you do the work that I do, you run into the mama bears or the papa bears who are
Yeah.
really bad at drawing boundaries with their own mama or papa bear self.
Mhm.
And so there are families that will yell at you. There are
Mm.
families that will, or even people within the community who will review you on a website for like 1 out of 5 stars with
Ugh.
absolutely brutal um, commentary. And
Mm.
but they're like, I didn't mean anything mean by it. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
What?
And on the opposite end, there are days. Yeah, it's like it's wild. I'm actually not a big fan of like doing my own social media and being on a lot of sites where people review, just
Mhm.
because inevitably you're gonna get that truly unhinged, hostile review from the person who thinks they're just honestly being like, "Oh, I'm being a nice person and
Mm.
informing people about my perspective." The worst one I ever had was somebody,
Mm.
like, I had done 2 camps in like 2 weeks. I
Uh-huh.
was tired, I was doing a group, and the person tore me a new one
Ugh.
on a review, but they were like, "I don't mean any disrespect by this. I hope you can see my perspective." And it was one of the most hostile things someone ever said to me in my life. And it's
Oh.
like, okay, okay, take space from this. But
Oh.
yeah, there's so many different perspectives, and it becomes so difficult. And as you know, we have to protect ourselves. We have to draw boundaries, and on both sides in every capacity. Because if we
Yeah.
don't draw boundaries, we don't continue the work.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you had someone do that kind of thing because that's just brutal, you know? And it actually reminds me of a saying in the rooms of recovery that was brutally honest without love is just being brutal, you know? And I was like, yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good way to put it because you can give your perspective in a loving manner, even if it isn't the nicest thing. And oh man, I'm so sorry that
Mhm.
you had to have that kind of thing because again, it's like if you're putting yourself out there trying to do good and someone just rips you a new one, it's like, okay, never mind. Just not do that ever again. And I'm just glad that you are still doing what you do though, because it sounds like you've helped a ton of people. And real quick, where can people find you if they're looking to get your help with this kind of stuff in storytelling and event specialists? Because that sounds like something that would help out a ton of people nowadays.
Yeah, so I mean, people can always find me on LinkedIn. Uh,
Okay.
I'm Thomas R. Wilson. You can always email me, and I do apologize to anybody who this sounds almost identical. I was gifted this email and I stick with it because I love it. But my email is ndttrpg at gmail. And my goodness, until I started saying that out loud, I was like, oh, that's really hard for people. So I'll make sure that link is also provided.
Okay.
People can also find me out in the community. They can email me. I'm also on various social media like Instagram, which I don't work very hard on, I'll be honest, and with RH storytelling. And I'll make sure my link tree so everything is listed is there as well.
Okay.
But yeah,
And you're a RH Creative Advocacy and Storytelling.net, correct?
yes, I am. Sorry, I
Okay.
forgot to say that one.
Oh, you're good. I just got that one copy and pasted and ready to go, and I accidentally made it a little bit too big. Uh, so, uh, but thank you for sharing that with us because I know that there's many people out there that are going to hear this and they're going to be like, "Oh, I want to reach out to this guy because he knows exactly either what I'm going through or he has a good idea of how to listen to understand what this person is needing, maybe." And it's really hard to be able to sit there and listen sometimes, especially for like mama and papa bear, whenever all they
Mhm.
want to do is help and be there for their kid. And sometimes it is best for them to just take that step back. Um, but I mean, that's just one of those things that we learn boundaries and have to practice them daily with ourselves, even. And I mean, it's just an awesome
Mhm.
story that you've got. And so, I mean, if you're wanting to come back on in the future so we can dive more into like boundaries or something like that, I would be more than happy to have you back. Um, and I do got to ask though, do you think you're ready to play our little game show that we've got ready to go?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, our game show today is called the Critical Hit Challenge. I'm going to provide you with three scenarios representing common community hurdles. That was a tongue twister. You have 60 seconds to cast a spell or use a storytelling skill to resolve the conflict using the strength based mindset with storytelling. So, round one, the wall of noise. A local concert venue wants to be inclusive, but doesn't know how to handle the volume. What's your first action to lower that barrier?
So the very first thing I would say is I would ask them to reach out to their community
Mhm.
and ask them what they want. So there's so much power in that. And the second thing I would say, um, this is actually a really cool technique that I have seen people use. Um, and it so they walk around with their eyes closed and then
Okay.
they blare music in a small room.
Huh.
And after they do that, they then document how disorienting that was.
Huh. Okay. And so that way it gives them a better idea of how to handle a different environment.
Yes, absolutely. So it
Huh.
helps them to experience one, what it's like to move around without vision, and then also, and if you already have people who are sensitive, don't have those be those people, but
Mhm.
it incorporates different volume noises,
Mhm.
and it also helps them to see from a different perspective.
Huh.
And the last thing I would also say with that is I also encourage them to, after a meeting, sit down, lying down in a room that is dark on a comfortable space, maybe with a blanket,
Hmm.
and have them then compare the two.
Hmm. Okay. I love that. That sounds like it would be the perfect thing for someone. All right. So round two, the skeptical employer. You encounter a boss who thinks hiring neurodiverse staff is too complicated. What charisma check or piece of data do you use to flip that script?
Oh, I love that. I don't get asked this one a whole lot. So the first thing that I would do is I wish, oh my gosh, I wish I could actually roll a dice to give an answer right now. But
Go for it.
so the data that I would give is I would get up and get it, but so the thing that I would actually recommend them to do is to one, check out Colorado APSI or National APSI, which is the Association of People Supporting Employment First.
Okay.
I actually work with them on a lot of my work, and they have
Okay.
some fantastic data about how it is to actually employ someone. But the other thing that I would encourage them to do is check out YouTube videos or even some documentation from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because traditionally, neurodiverse workers
Hmm.
are some of the best. When they're truly passionate about what they do, they go above and beyond.
Uh-huh.
They often work late, and they
Hmm.
also really become hyper invested. I know somebody, I'm going to try to do this in under 60 seconds. I know of a case where somebody who was in and out of jobs. He had a really hard time. He got hired by an organization that cared, and now he's literally designing satellite technology for NASA. And he is
Whoa.
considered their top employee because he has been there for like 10 years and he is just killing it. It's awesome. So I'd also tell them that story.
Oh man, that is way too cool. Someone getting a job and being the top at NASA, that is, yeah, definitely the go-to example for sure. All right, last round. The desolate heart. A youth tells you that they feel like a mistake because of their diagnosis. What healing spell or word do you gift them?
Oh my gosh. So um so I would almost say healing hands from D&D, but I would want to make sure I don't touch somebody without their permission.
Consent
The
is
other thing
important.
I would say is, yeah, it's very important. I would ask them to take a deep breath, and think about something that makes them smile. And
Mhm.
then the last thing that I would ask them to do is sit down after we talk about it and ask them to think of three things that they do well. Doesn't need to be anything tied to mental health, but maybe it's playing a video game, talking to a friend, or something else. Because taking that mindset and shifting it to anything a person does well can help build confidence. And then the last thing that I would ask them to do is continue on, and
Mm.
think, and when they're not feeling less than, when they're not feeling worse, I would ask them to really either look at themselves in the mirror and give themselves three compliments. It's not an immediate fix, but it's one that can help develop confidence. It's one that can shift a mindset, and it's one that can really help them to develop empathy for themselves.
Oh, okay. I love that answer. And it sounds like that's the kind of stuff and advice that I needed growing up as well. So thank you. So, Thomas, because you played our critical hit challenge, you have earned the honorary title of the architect of the resilient realm for retrieving sanity. So, thank you for that, sir. And I got,
Thank you.
yeah, I've got one last question for you, if you don't mind. All right.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. So, Thomas, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact our mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today, and what's one practice or perspective you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
So I think retrieving sanity means to me today, making sure to care for myself and also honor who and what I want to be in the future. And one thing that I would recommend for anybody, I would recommend that we all take a break, step back from our work, our busy lives, and spend time doing something we love. It doesn't need to be productive. It doesn't need to be something that makes us money. But if it makes us happy and it makes us smile genuinely, that's what I would recommend.
Ooh, I love that. Just kind of breaking free from the monotony and mundane and just enjoying that creative process within yourself, even. So, that is some solid work. Man, Thomas, I just got to say thank you again for being on Retrieving Sanity because this has been an amazing episode and I can't wait to speak to you again and dive into that employment first. Was that right? Did I say that correct?
Yes, employment first.
Okay. Cool. Then we can dive into that a little bit more and we can find out what other ways we can help everyone else out there. And I mean, I just got to say, I'm really inspired and I hope other people out there are as well because this has been great and I can't wait to see what other magic you work in the world. So everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, don't forget, try to love yourself, love others if you can, but you got to love yourself first. And we'll see y'all in the future. And if you have any mental health crisis, you can dial 988 or text 741 741. If you're in the LGBTQ plus community, you can call the Trevor Project up in Canada. And I mean, just keep being frosty unless you're stuck out in the cold, in which case, get inside and get toasty. Until then, we'll see y'all next time. Much love. Shalom. And